My name is Jennifer Marianna. I am the writer, director, editor, and composer of Apotheosis and the drummer and producer for Her Gift and Curse, and this is the director's commentary for Apotheosis. I had to leave this message because YouTube kept corrupting my footage for how dark it was. This is the first time that I'd ever scored anything on a project, and the notes of the score are based in the notes of the lead guitar line of the song. The opening shot here being a oneer was not originally in the storyboard, and we ended up combining everything day of for time to create a little bit more of an effective, literal drop-in.
Why have you forsaken me?
All of this dialogue that you're hearing was written for a spoken interlude for a future Her Gift and Curse live performance, but was transitioned to this film to set up the world, and then later added into Dial Tone, which became the 5th Her Gift and Curse track.
This place.
These long shots were all kind of separated by these heartbeats to keep everything in this sort of surreal, dreamlike headspace that Echo is in, intentionally obscuring the time and place that this film is within. And Sienna here is, of course, the biggest trooper ever for actually lying on that dirty floor. It was nasty in that basement, and she just full-sended it. There was an original draft of this scene that had Echo screaming here and very visceral sound effects that I didn't end up wanting to use as it was already dark enough, and Echo herself is desensitized to the violence from decades of this, and I figured that blending into this score that I was creating and just how droney and repetitive it is had a very different effect than the more literal squelching and screaming and shrieking that might be a little bit too intense while keeping the visual intensity of the scene.
This existence is pain. Every moment drives nails through my skin.
These shots of Sienna Echo's eyes are what I really think kind of sold all of the emotion in this scene. And she'd never acted before, so I cannot commend this performance enough. Our DP put Vaseline on the lens to really make the chains glow, which gave this whole film a really unique look. So thanks, Em, for that.
There's another part of me.
Where is it?
She's lost.
This is my favorite shot. The anger in her eyes that's conveyed is just so fury-filled and incredible. I absolutely adore the way that she just crawls towards the camera here like a cryptid, so broken and yet so full of determination.
Will you apologize?
And here the hopelessness that is in this shot and how long it lingers makes it another one of my favorites. That was almost the thumbnail for the video.
Are you sorry for what you did?
Here the recorded dialogue was recorded sync to visuals as opposed to visual sync to audio. So when we were in the recording booth recording the album, it was a little bit more difficult to make it perfectly on sync, but I think we ended up nailing it pretty well. This sideways shot here was the moment on set that I think everyone really felt like everything was coming together, and I barely touched the colors or anything because I just loved how bright and weird and wrong it looked in a surrealist, heaven-y sort of way. The color palette established in these exterior performance shots in the woods was kind of the basis of what I graded everything else on with how desaturated it was. And it also lent into the overall color palette. It was a little difficult to try and figure out how to get these performance shots of the vocalists with their masks that don't move, and we ended up going with obscuring Love behind some gauze and fog so you get the idea of her mouth moving without actually seeing her or revealing her identity. Here as Echo is running and she kind of blends up into Love's silhouette was a very intentional blocking exercise that we had to do. The widow is myself, Sienna, and our costume maker Holiday squished way too close together on apple boxes. Right as we cut to Echo screaming, we decided to switch to a noticeable switch to a handheld rig to keep it shaky without any stabilization to give this kind of jagged movement that her parts necessitate. This shot of Echo and Love on the water's edge was really funny to film because kayakers came up and interrupted it about 2 seconds before we started rolling. Kind of switching from this shaking, tweaking out was something I hadn't initially written in, but found in the edit and really liked. And the way that Sienna was just throwing herself around in the basement, I really commend her for because she was so committed. That doll breaking shot we only had one chance of, and it worked almost perfectly, enough for me to leave it in, so I decided to keep it there. It was a little difficult for me to direct as I was obviously drumming in the background of a lot of these shots during the performance scenes, so our DPM took over and made sure that the movements were kind of selling the takes, but it was a little dark for everyone to be throwing themselves around, except for Echo. This is actually the first take of the shot where Echo sees her lips sewn shut because I had such a visceral knot in my stomach reaction on set that I didn't want to use anything else because it terrified me, and I'd seen the makeup go on and wrote the thing, so I knew that this was the take. Yeah, it's just such incredible acting for someone that's never acted before, and we were letting her do a lot of it herself while still kind of walking her through beats off screen. Coming up, there's a shot of her looking down and seeing the chains broken from her wrists, and it was a little hard to convey ultimately what I wanted, but it was supposed to be the gods have taken pity on her and the chains shatter, and we were unable to do that on the day, so it's a little more happenstance quick here, and then she rushes off frame, tears the stitches from her mouth, and accidentally ran out of frame as she was doing so we didn't get the exact shot that we needed. All of these band performance shots were done well after midnight in the middle of the woods with very little power that kept disappearing. As Echo's escaping here, grading this was an absolute nightmare because of how much the light levels switch and how everything needs to remain desaturated, while I wanted the exteriors of Love to be super blown out since Echo's barely ever seen the sun. As they're exiting here, it was just another constant changing of light levels that I had to really work around to fix in the color grade. And this long, wide open shot was entirely our DP's invention, and I love it so much, and how the Vaseline gives Love just a little bit of a halo effect around her. It's supposed to be a lot more metaphorical than the literal joining of the two of them as they become one person again, and this switch was so impossible because the two Echo actors have a foot in height difference, and a tractor broke down in the background, but with a little quick zoom in and then pull out, I think we ended up pulling it off in a fairly seamless way. There are now way too many leaf pieces stuck forever inside of Echo's dress, unfortunately. In this shot, there's a little gap you can see of Echo's skin that was poking through that I had to desaturate because we didn't catch it on the day. And this was actually a static shot I zoomed out in post. Even though we had a dolly, we couldn't get it on location. And Tristan, who plays the father, is standing in as me all the way on the left, so I was free to direct and not be all painted and in costume. I'm going to leave the credits running in the background, but I just wanted to take this moment to thank every single person that worked on this project and helped out with it and supported it all along the way. All of the names of the cast and the crew are in the credits here, as well as some of the top donators from the Indiegogo, and everyone else is thanked in the description of the video on the official Her Gift and Curse YouTube channel. If you haven't already, you can stream Her Gift and Curse's self-titled debut album now on all streaming services, and you can watch the music video here on my channel or on the official Her Gift and Curse channel. My name is Jennifer Marianna, and this was the Apotheosis Director's Commentary.